The riders of the apocalypse are at the gates. How the Black Death devastated Europe. The year is 1347. You wake up one morning and feel as though the world is coming to an end. The streets are littered with corpses. Priests can no longer keep pace with the last rites. Rich or poor, king or peasant. When death swings its scythe, it asks for no identity. Today, as a generation that has lived through the COVID-19 pandemic, we think we understand what an outbreak truly is. Yet historians argue that compared to the events of the 14th century, modern pandemics are like simple firecrackers next to an atomic bomb. Tonight, we examine the great catastrophe that wiped nearly half of Europe's population, tens of millions of souls, off the map, the Black Death. Chapter 1. The Seeds of Catastrophe and Biological Warfare. Where did this nightmare begin? Chroniclers trace the plague's path back to the arid plains of Central Asia and the legendary Silk Road. However, its entry into Europe would be marked by perhaps the first recorded act of biological warfare in human history. The year is 1346. The Mongol forces are laying siege to the Genoese colony of Kaffa in Crimea. Within the Mongol ranks, soldiers are dropping like flies from a mysterious and gruesome sickness. But before retreating, the Mongols execute a terrifying strategy. They load the bloated, plague-ridden corpses of their fallen comrades into catapults and hurl them over the city walls. Inside the city, an invisible enemy was now on the prowl. Terrified Genoese merchants scrambled onto their ships and fled, but they were not alone. They were carrying death itself. When those ships finally docked at the port of Messina, Sicily, they brought with them the apocalypse of Europe. Chapter 2. The Face of the Black Death. The disease was monstrous. A bacterium known as Yersinia pestis hitched a ride on fleas and rats to spread its lethal cargo. Death came for its victims in three terrifying forms. First, the bubonic plague, where the lymph nodes swelled into black, agonizing lumps the size of an apple, known as buboes. Then the pneumonic plague, which caused the lungs to collapse and fail. And finally, the septicemic plague, where the very blood in a person's veins turned to poison. Agnolo di Tura of Siena, an eyewitness to the horror, recounts the devastation in words that still haunt us centuries later. Fathers abandoned their children, and wives left their husbands, for it seemed the contagion could pass with a single breath, or even a glance. And I, Agnolo di Tura, buried my 5 children with my own hands. Chapter 3. Desperation and the Beaked Doctors. People were utterly lost in the darkness. There was no germ theory, no antibiotics. The medical world of the time believed the plague spread through miasma, a foul, corrupted air. This belief gave birth to the haunting and iconic figure of the plague doctor. Those long bird-like beaks were not designed to terrify, but to protect. The beaks were stuffed with aromatic herbs like lavender, rosemary, and cloves, intended to filter out the evil air before the doctor could breathe it in. Yet, neither bathing in vinegar, nor lighting massive bonfires, nor these leather masks could stop the onslaught. The desperation reached such depths that the church bells tolled incessantly for the dead, until eventually there was no one left alive to ring them. Chapter 4. Scapegoats and Social Collapse. When science failed, the masses clung to superstition. Desperate souls declared the plague a divine punishment from God, giving rise to the cult of the flagellants. They marched through city squares, chanting hymns and whipping themselves until they bled, hoping to appease a vengeful heaven. But the darkness in men's hearts grew even deeper as they searched for a scapegoat. In some regions, entire Jewish communities were slaughtered, falsely accused of poisoning the wells. In others, cats, declared by some to be servants of the devil, were massacred in the thousands, What a cruel irony! By slaughtering the cats, they cleared the way for the very rats that carried the plague to thrive. And the Black Death only grew stronger. Chapter 5. The Dance of Death and a Changing World. In the heart of this chaos, even art underwent a transformation. The movement known as Danse Macabre, the Dance of Death, was born. These grim masterpieces screamed a singular, haunting truth. Do not trust in your wealth. Do not trust in your beauty. In the face of death, all are equal. Yet the Black Death brought more than just the end. It brought a radical rebirth. Europe was changed at its very roots. With the population decimated, the surviving peasants and laborers became more precious than ever. As the workforce dwindled, wages soared and the rigid walls of feudalism began to crumble. When the people saw that the prayers of the church could not hold back the tide of death, they began to question. Boccaccio wrote his masterpiece, The Decameron, during this era. A new philosophy took hold. We may die tomorrow, so let us taste the joy of today. This was the spirit of Carpe Diem. This mental revolution unlocked the gates to the Renaissance and the birth of modern science. Learning from the past, the Black Death was one of the darkest chapters in human history. It claimed millions of lives and turned thriving cities into ghost towns. Yet from this very devastation, the foundations of modern medicine, the practice of quarantine, and the birth of public health awareness emerged. History shows us that even after the greatest catastrophes, humanity finds a way to endure, to adapt, and to transform. The agony of those dark days continues to light the path for the science of today.